Planet Dolan.
From not wearing mixed-match socks to not picking up snow, the Planet Dolan crew reenacts some of the best true stories from our subreddit about the weirdest rules our schools have. I'm Hellbent, and today I'll be your narrator. Number 10 was submitted by Fireboss76. Doopy's elementary school had a weird rule where they weren't allowed to talk about cats. She doesn't know why, but all the teachers said it was for personal reasons. So Doopy walked into the principal's office and told him that it was the stupidest rule ever. The principal said, "Go back to your lunch, you cat lover!" Remaining calm, Doopy walked back to the cafeteria. To this day, she never knew why talking about cats was prohibited. She guesses it was a fear the principal had.
Ah, fucking cat stole my lunch.
Number 9 was submitted by only one random etc. These names get harder every time. For some odd reason, Froggy's school didn't allow mixed-matched socks. It got to the point where teachers would write people up for not wearing white socks. Although there were a few teachers who didn't care about that rule, a vast majority did. Froggy didn't follow the rule because she would wear high heels. But there was one time where she wasn't wearing high heels and came across two teachers talking about the rule. As they talked, they began pointing to the students who weren't following the rule. One of the students they pointed at was Froggy, who wanted to say, "I don't fucking care about your rules!" She didn't want to get in trouble though, so she kept her mouth shut. Number 8 was submitted by Panda1117. Derek's school had a lot of weird rules, but one that stood out was not being able to pick up snow. When he was in kindergarten, Derek had just switched schools and didn't know about the rule. One day, his area ended up getting a few inches of snow, so everyone was very excited about going outside. When it was time to go outside for recess, Derek went over to the snow. He rolled it into a snowball and threw it at a kid's face. The kid was caught off guard but decided to throw one back at him. One thing led to another, and both of them were sent to the principal's office where their parents were angrily waiting. Derek and his classmate got in-school suspension for one day and were nicknamed Snowballers. They became friends after that. Number 7 was submitted by FlamingGamerYoutube. The weirdest rule that Dean's school ever had was when he was in the 3rd grade. They weren't allowed to have backpacks that were brown in color. Dean and his friends didn't know why at first, but then they were told it was considered offensive to some people. The school never specified which people brown backpacks offended. Dean ended up going to a different school where he carried a non-offensive camouflage-colored backpack. Number 6 was submitted by Sharnenah. Honeybits High School had a rule to where students always had to smile. By her 2nd year at the school, it got to the point where teachers suspected that people were dealing drugs in the bathrooms or guys were getting some pleasant experiences. One day, Honeybits was in her English class when one of her classmates, a girl, came back from the bathroom smiling. The teacher stopped his lecture to look at her. In a strong voice, he asked, "Why are you smiling?" That wasn't the first time the teacher accused the girl of any wrongdoing, since he really didn't like her. Number 5 was submitted by E-Ray-35-717. Dolan School had a weird rule to where students couldn't laugh for more than 30 seconds, and he was the reason the rule was implemented. One day, Dolan got a case of the giggles and couldn't stop laughing. He laughed for 45 minutes straight. It got so bad he became lightheaded and couldn't walk. He was sent to the principal's office where he eventually stopped laughing. The principal threatened to call his mom and send him home early. After that, all of the teachers were informed about what happened. They were instructed to silence their students if any laughter went on for more than 30 seconds. Of course, when it comes to the rule, all the teachers are stricter with Dolan. Number 4 was submitted by Shadow Goddess. One day, a kid stepped on Nixiam's hand and broke one of his fingers. However, he couldn't go to the school nurse because of a weird rule. The rule was that students weren't allowed to go to the school nurse unless they had a visible wound. Nixiam wondered what would happen if a kid fell from a slide, broke a rib, and punctured a lung. Would the teachers just give him a good old pat on the back and tell him to be more careful next time? Number 3 was submitted by TheFemaleGirl. While at primary school, Princess Proton and her fellow classmates weren't allowed to fall from their chairs. It was an actual rule one of the teachers had in her classroom. One day, their teacher put up a sign which said, "Falling off means standing up." For the first few hours, nobody understood what that meant. It all changed when one of Princess Proton's classmates, Spences, was pushed off her chair by a bully. Their teacher only saw her falling from the chair and began screaming at her. She took away Spence's chair, making her work, learn, and even eat while standing up. Furthermore, she had to stand for a week. By the end of the school year, at least 75% of Princess Proton's class had to stand up. Years later, she found out from her little brother that the teacher abandoned the rule after her chair broke and she fell flat on her face. Number 2 was submitted by DanyCookieMonster. At Captain School, people often lost things. When their belongings were found, they were usually taken to the lost and found. One day, the principal said that there shouldn't be any lost items. If a student lost something, they would have to pay for it. So the principal hired someone to sit on a bench next to the lost and found. That meant if Captain had something in the lost and found, he would have to buy back the item he lost. It was the dumbest rule at his school. What's the weirdest rule my school ever had? It's a rule that everybody has to deal with, the zero tolerance policy. What exactly is a zero tolerance policy? It's a rule that means no matter what the circumstance, if you break a rule, whether to save a life, protect your own, or do the right thing, you are still in violation and you will be punished. So let's say somebody's punching you in the face over and over and over and over again. If you strike back, you're also fighting, and you'll both be equally punished. You think that's bad? Imagine you see somebody choking and gasping for air, but you have your inhaler on you, so you run up to them and you administer that inhaler, they're breathing again, you just saved a life! And you also just administered a drug to another student on campus, so I'm afraid you have to be expelled. It wasn't all bad though. We found out the rule went both ways for administration and students. And the administration didn't always get along either. So, let's say you see Coach Rimmer out in the parking lot smoking a cigarette. Tell the reading teacher, she hates that guy. She'll run out in the parking lot, get him in trouble, and a good time will be had by all. Well, except for Coach Rimmer. Not that much more to say outside of the fact that everybody hated that rule. Faculty, students, except for some of the people at the top of administration. They loved the rule because it meant they didn't have to think anymore. Huge thanks for the folks over on our Planet Dolan subreddit for submitting their stories. We have another question for you. What's the scariest thing you experienced as a kid? Let us know in the Reddit page linked below and you might be featured in a future countdown. This video was made possible by our fans over on Patreon. Thanks for your support, guys. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.